This is the single best tool that I have found to create really comprehensive product messaging if you're in a B2B setting. It helps you strike the right balance between strategic relevance, why is this important, and then concrete relevance, which is about what do I get out of it and how does it work. It also helps you answer a couple of fundamental messaging questions. For example, should you be leading with features or should you be leading with benefits? And when does it make sense to use either one of those? Because at the end of the day, if you're messaging for a B2B product, you need the detailed nitty-gritty capabilities and features. You need that for the technical users. They have to understand how it's going to fit into their workflow. On the flip side, you also need these big aspirational outcomes and benefits that really help the executive level buyers understand what your tool is going to help them get in the long run. Why is it important for them? Why is it important for a team leader to implement this for their team of designers, let's say? So you need a full spectrum of messaging that covers both the abstract and the really concrete. And this tool is perfect for that. It's called the How Why ladder, and it essentially looks like a ladder. Yeah, there's different levels to the ladder. At the top, you have the abstract, and at the very bottom, you have concrete. It essentially works like this. You start with a seed message. Now you take that message and you can ask why to uncover the strategic and contextual frame of your message. And you can ask how to ground your message in the unique characteristics of the claim. And here's how I like to think about it. There's different levels, right? You can assign as many levels as you want. You can obviously dial this in depending on how you want to use it. But essentially, there's the spectrum from top to bottom, level 5 to level 1. You can think about different categories being answered at each of these different levels. So here's an example. When you look at the product value that you address at level 5, you're talking about benefits and outcomes. And when you get down to level 1, you're talking about features and functionalities, the really specific stuff. At the higher end, you're answering, why is this important? And at the lower end, you're answering, how does this work? And that's really important when you're working with B2B buyers, because B2B buyers usually are in a buying team. There's not one person who's making the decision. Sometimes there is, but often there's more than one person in different roles, and messages will resonate with those different roles because of what they care about and what's important to them. So here's another example. At Kalungi and at T2D3, we like to break our personas into 3. We have P1, P2, and P3. P1, we like to consider the user. They're the person who's advocating for your software. P2, you can think of as the supervisor, the person who manages the user. Sometimes this can be a team lead or a manager of a team. Sometimes you're not even selling into a team. You can just think of this as someone who has a little bit more authority than the user, the person who sits above them in the organizational structure. And then at P3, we like to think of this person as the executive. And sometimes we call them the blocker, because often this is the person who is sitting at the top, probably controlling the purse strings and making the decision. It might be the CFO, maybe it's the CEO, and maybe it's a board member who has to approve the decision before it will actually go through. The personas also change depending on the level of message that you're on. So for example, level 5, you're typically talking with the P3 or the executive. This person cares a lot more about the benefits and the outcomes, the more abstract components of your messaging. When you get down to level 3, you're talking to P2, often the supervisor or the team leader. And when you get down to P1, you're usually talking about the user, the person who's actually going to be implementing this or adopting it into their workflow. And sometimes the user doesn't always necessarily have to be the actual user, like the person who is going around and clicking in your app. Sometimes it can actually be someone who's implementing it. One example of this where the user or P1 is not necessarily the user can sometimes fall in with an IT person, because the IT person has to go in and maybe connect your tool with another tool that they have. Maybe it's a system of record and they need a lot of documentation. They need to understand that they can access certain endpoints or that it can do certain things. So in that case, that level of messaging is typically pretty detailed and specific and concrete, and it's something that the IT person needs to have on the buying team in order to feel good about adopting your tool. And then you can kind of think of it like this. The messaging style at level 5 is more executive. At level 3, it's more team level. And at level 2, it's more role level. Theory is really cool, but I love looking at examples because I think it actually makes it more useful and usable. So let's look at Figma, for example. 2 reasons. 1, I think Figma does this really well. And 2, I love Figma. I'm not wearing my Figma shirt today, but I do have one. Okay, so Figma recently launched Dev Mode, and Dev Mode is designed to give developers a little bit more of a stake in the design process within the Figma workflow. It makes product development a little bit more efficient for design teams. Okay, so let's look at that and let's turn that into a value prop for Figma. We'll take this for example. Ditch confusion, gaps, guesswork, and misunderstandings in design handoffs. Okay, cool. So we'll put it right in the middle of our ladder. And let's ask how. How does Figma do that? There's probably a few ways, but for the sake of keeping this digestible, let's just look at one. So one of the ways that Figma helps remove confusion and misunderstandings in the design dev handoff is through prototypes, which is a capability. And so if we look at that and turn that into a message, we can say this: test and validate your designs and user flows with high fidelity, no code, interactive prototypes, and click-through models. Awesome. So now we can ask again one more time if we want to get even more specific, how? How do you test and validate your designs and user flows with high fidelity, no code? How does that work? How do prototypes work? What makes them special within Figma? So now we can actually get a little bit more granular on the message. Here's one of the features and functionalities of Figma's prototyping tool. You can simulate a wide range of interactions, including click, scroll, on hover, etc., etc. Another one would be automatically animate transitions between objects that look similarly to each other, right? That's unique to Figma. Okay, what else? You can use conditional logic and mathematical expressions to simulate really complex interactions, like add to cart interactions or things where you need different frames to show up depending on the state of something else. You can create and store variables on design elements to simulate dynamic states and prototypes. You see, these are really detailed and sandy versions of the message, and it's probably only relevant to somebody who's digging in and trying to compare Figma's prototyping capabilities with one of their competitors. But that's really helpful, right? You can think about competitive battle cards. You can think about the actual specific product page for prototyping. Someone cares about this. And before they invest in a tool like Figma, it's a pretty big ecosystem investment, especially if you have a big design team, they want to understand what are the actual prototyping capabilities, right? Do I need another tool to supplement the prototyping, or should we use something different? Or is Figma going to be enough? And how does that actually work? So that's where the lower levels of the ladder really shine. Okay. And now let's go back to the seed message. And now we can ask why to move up in abstraction up to the higher levels and maybe appeal to some of the team and the executive levels of the company that we're selling into. Okay. So ditch confusion, gaps, guesswork, and misunderstandings in design handoffs. Okay. Why is that important? Well, I can think of a couple of things, right? If I am a design manager, I'm probably getting gold on making my team more efficient. And Figma is going to help me do that. If I can remove confusion and guesswork and rework in the handoffs between design and development, that's a big win for me. So it's important because it makes my team a lot more efficient. And I might be able to show some of those efficiencies in speed gains. So now we have level 4, make your product design and development process more efficient. And if we want to go one level up even, you kind of get into like the strategic narrative component of it, right? And you start to get a little bit more abstract and intuitive. So why is it important to make your design process more efficient? Well, it helps you deliver better products faster. It means you get more iterations, more cycles, more feedback between your design and development teams. And if they can do that faster, then you're going to get better products faster. So there's a quick example of how you can use the how why ladder to create a full spectrum of messaging. Actually, if you go on Figma's website, you'll notice that all of the messages that I just pulled out are on their website. And it typically goes more abstract on the homepage to more detailed as you click into some of the product and the feature pages. Apple is another company that does this really well. I hesitate using them as an example because they're B2C more than they are B2B. But if you're ever looking for a great example of like waterfalling messages, Apple is so good. They start really big and abstract and kind of talk about the benefits and the outcomes and the status, and they're very much squishy and mushy. But if you're kind of geeky about the hardware, you can keep clicking in and diving deeper and deeper and deeper into the specs, and they will tell you everything that you ever wanted to know about the hardware, how it was built, what it's made of, everything. So it's a really good example of going from level 5 to level 1 and everything in between. So here's a couple of pitfalls that you can run into on accident. So the how why ladder is great, but you can go too high. If you ask why enough times of a specific message, eventually at some point you're going to get to save time or save money. And I really encourage you to not ever use those as value propositions, please. Seriously, because save time and save money are not differentiated. When you really boil it down, most B2B products are designed to save you time or save you money. Not all of them, but most of them. And if you lead with save time or save money, you're going to, I guarantee you, leave somebody asking how. How do you do that better than the competition? How do you do it in a way that is unique to me and my business and maybe my industry or my use case, or my role, and you're going to miss out on some really impactful messaging just because you wanted to stay really high. So here's my advice. If you find yourself at save time or save money, stop, go back. You've gone too far. The really special stuff comes out 1 or 2 levels below that. It comes out in the way that you save time or save money for somebody, or in the way that you have built your product for a specific vertical or a specific industry. You want people to feel that your product is built for them. And the only way to do that is to ask how. If you stay too high with the why, you're going to miss out on that. So again, try not to, you get to the point where you're saying save time or save money, just go down a couple of levels and you'll probably be okay. All right, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you could give us a like, give us a subscribe, because it helps other people like you find us. And it's also a really good vote to tell us that we should create more of this. This framework is actually from the T2D3 book, which I co-authored with Stein Hendricks, who is a co-founder of Kalungi. And Kalungi is an outsourced marketing agency that designs and executes go-to-markets for early stage software companies that have some level of product market fit. And the How Why ladder is specifically on page 72, but it only had 1 page. So I thought it would be nice to do a little bit of a deeper dive and come up with this canvas because it's a really important tool. It just didn't get a lot of real estate in the book. So if you're interested in more frameworks like this, that book is packed with them. I'll leave a link below in the description. You can also find it at www.t2d3.pro. And thanks for watching. Go get after it.